Even when building a body, you reap what you sow. Here's your spooky spot on the Four Horsemen figure Obscura, Frankenstein's creature. The figure Obscura, Frankenstein's creature figure, includes pieces to display him with one of two distinct looks, either his operating table look with medical wraps and his bare limbs, or the escape look with soft goods pants plus interchangeable feet and boots and removable coats. In addition to the parts to change the creature's look, including alternate heads and hands, this set also includes a variety of diorama-like display items. This set comes with operating table with straps, a side table for equipment, specimen jars with extra heads and skeleton hand that fit inside, as well as scientific tools and books that would be used by Dr. Victor Frankenstein to create his creature. They say it's very rare to catch lightning in a bottle, but what about catching lightning in a body? Just before, of course, we get a closer look, though, at the new Four Horsemen figure Obscura, Frankenstein's creature, I'd like to thank the folks over at Four Horsemen that were kind enough to provide this sample. Hey, good news is this figure is available right now over on their site for $70. I'll provide the link down below if you guys are interested to grab one for yourself. As for the creature itself, though, you're looking at it standing at about 7 3/4 of an inch in height, or Dr. Victor Frankenstein's creation stands at about 19.5 centimeters tall. Well, the first thing we have a look at is the cover that went over top of the box. Now, when we were first unboxing the creature, I don't know if you may have already noticed this, but the flaps are only attached to the rest of the box by magnets. You flip the one flap up, you can do the exact same on the other side, and then you can take the cover off completely, revealing the creature within the window underneath. The thing that's neat about this is, first of all, you got the creature featured on the front with some stellar-looking artwork being pursued by what looks to be a mob of villagers. I don't know how so quickly they get pitchforks and torches, but of course they're pursuing the creature. That creature looks awesome. Now, one thing, thinking outside the box, literally, is that you can also use this same flap, and if you flip it around, instantly, bingo bango, you've got yourself a diorama background. Now, with the amount of real estate space this guy's going to be occupying once you bring in the lab table, once you bring in all the other accoutrements that come with him, of course, you're going to want to use an equally large-sized diorama. And I'm glad to see that they included this. It's a fairly thick card with hinges on either side. It holds its own quite nicely. And I would imagine that this is probably the back section of Victor Frankenstein's lab. If we just actually move the monster out of the way, you can see there's a desk, there's some tables, there's a feather, there's a pen feather as well. So it looks like that he's probably taking notes, making the mistakes along the way of how he's building a body from forgotten corpses. Really, really cool. What's also really cool, too, is that they also included excerpts from Mary Shelley herself. Still has the same artwork featured on the front, but if you want sort of a simplified idea of what went behind the scenes and, of course, the history of the creature, we actually get yourself a little excerpt from her book. Just flipping over to the front, actually, first of all, I do want to also give props, though, to the team behind the scenes that made the creature a reality, not just Victor Frankenstein. Frankenstein's creature character was designed by Eric Treadaway, artwork by Nate Birch, content by Jeremy Gerard, and excerpts from, of course, as mentioned already, Mary Shelley herself. So if you flip through, though, the pages, I'm not going to show you every single page, but it actually does take it, first of all, a biography on Mary Shelley herself. Down below, there's a picture of Mary Shelley, born August 30th, 1797, died February 1st, 1851. There's also a sketch there of the same creature. Excerpt from chapter 5. We can actually flip through this as well. There's some sketches there as well. There's the same image that they used for the front of the box. Lots of good stuff going on here. Now, again, if you happen to pick this figure up for yourself, you may have already spent some time reading through this. Shortly after this review, I will be doing the same. Just really cool, and thinking, again, literally outside the box that they would include as much as they did. Just the fact that they, first of all, include the booklet, and as well, this really cool diorama can be displayed behind the creature. And I just moved the diorama out of the way so we can spend a little bit more time dissecting all the various things that come included with Frankenstein. First, the figure does come included with a lab table as well as a side table to hold all the various things that he's going to come included with. Some assembly is required. I will say, though, they don't include instructions. It wasn't a really hard thing to kind of piece everything together. I looked at images online and sort of just got the gist of it. You get the lab table first of all, and the table itself does attach. And I just want to show you guys, this is a separate piece. This comes as a separate piece as well as the bottom section for the table. This will be on the bottom tray, and all you really have to do, the table is actually flat when you first get it out of the box. Now, one thing I will stress this is the stress of these joints. The tabletop, first of all, is really tight. Now, I have already heated this with a hairdryer, and even then, it's very tight. They even, in fact, include like a little pamphlet to tell you that joints, anything on the figure that you find tight right away, heat up, and you'll see when we get to looking at his torso, a hairdryer would be definitely recommended for this. But you're basically going to only take the bottom half of this little leg section here, and they just fit in place. And they're friction force, so once they're there, they're not going anywhere. The lab table does have, again, some articulation, but you can feel like really when you're moving things, it only goes one way, and it kind of gets to a point like right here where it doesn't want to go any further. Now, this is the point where I'm going to say to myself, I'm not going to push this any further. It does look like it may be able to move a little bit more than this, but the fact that it already gets to this point and it's telling me, yeah, don't force the matter. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. Even with the way it is right now, at least you get yourself an angled tabletop that the creature can stand on top of. Speaking of the creature, though, by the way, if you wanted to, the creature basically just sits against the table. The table, admittingly, probably could have been a little bit longer, maybe to about here, but, you know, it does the job that it needs to do. It holds Frankenstein's monster in place. Now, of course, it does have some straps there as well. I'm going to put them down right here for a second. He comes with a couple of straps. Now, the straps have 2 holes on both sides. He also has these little notches that stick out the side of the table as well. So you can probably already see, you're going to put 2 and 2 together. This is made of a fairly kind of rubbery kind of plastic, so when you're stretching this, one of my worries really was things like this would be potentially broken, but with this being using a softer plastic, it's a little easier to get this around the notches. Now, obviously, it would make probably the most sense to put the Frankenstein's monster on first and then put the straps across, but I'm going to just put the straps on right now just to show you guys how this works. Now, obviously, leaving off one side probably would make the most sense, and then you would just put your creature on, strap down then the other side, and then that just, like I said, plugs in place. Couldn't be any bit easier. I think probably, if anything, I probably would have flipped this around so that this was here, because this is actually the longer, you know what, we'll do this right now. You want to make sure you've got the straps on the right side, and I just happen to have these on the wrong side, so we're just going to take these off. This also as well shows you guys how easy they are to remove. If you're having stresses doing this, by all means, heat any one of these things in. You can either use hot water. I mean, a hairdryer would be so much easier as well. If you're looking at them, see how this one is a little bit longer? So this would be the one that goes to the top. So that just plugs in place. You know what I might even just do? I'll leave them off on one side, because I know eventually I'm going to just strap down the creature when we get everything stripped down on him. So leave that off for right now. He also does come included with a series of books. Now, none of these books are ones that open, but they are very well detailed. This is a green book. It doesn't actually give you anything on the platelet here. This could be perhaps Victor's journal. It doesn't open up, but it does look as good as it would be for a book if that would open up. The thing that's a little confusing, though, for me is, and again, I looked at this online too, there's these holes on the bottom of the book. Now, there doesn't seem to be anything that comes with him would give me then the idea that these are supposed to plug in place anywhere. I was thinking, for example, like, would you be able to take one of the hands and maybe plug them in place so it looks like the hand is kind of holding the book or kind of resting on top? No, that doesn't work at all. So I'm not really sure why there's holes on the back of the book unless it serves a purpose for a release down the road. But you get a green book. You also get as well a black book. This black book does look like it deals with maybe some of the black arts. It's got a strap on the front. The strap can't be opened up. And again, like, none of the pages, even though, like, one thing I really like about they've done with the books here is they've made the pages irregular. You can see that some of them are sort of sticking out, like the pages would have been suggestedly ripped out of the book. There's also as well, it looks to be a bookmark. So this is the part where Victor has marked in the book. Maybe this has something to do with resurrecting the dead. Maybe should put that book down. And then, of course, we also get ourselves a brown book, which again is bound here on the front, perhaps a leather bound book. Nicely done, which again, like all 3 of these, even though you really don't have yourself necessarily a little small bookcase, I might maybe see if I can find myself a bookcase. Or, hey, why not? You can also put it on the lab table. That's just off to the side, too. Speaking of the lab table, that was one of the other things that does require a little bit of assembly. The table actually has 3 component pieces. So let's just undo this piece. We'll take this part off also as well. There we go. So like with the larger table, obviously for Frankie, you get a smaller version of this that has the legs. I like the way that they've chipped away some of the paint so it looks like it's got age to it. But all you do then is you take this post piece, and this fits into this. I know that's the obvious thing. And then this then plugs onto the bottom of the table, just like that. So you got yourself a little side accompanying table. What else do we have? We have ourselves some of the things that can actually go on the table. So maybe what I'll do is I'll bring the table over here. You have like a crank wheel that I would imagine would be the thing that's going to generate the power. Electricity may not very well be the thing that's going to get used to resurrect this corpse. What instead might be done is generating some power by hand. This doesn't actually turn, so don't try to turn it because you're only just going to break it. It's got a wire. The wire, actually, there's 2 wires. And I don't know specifically where the wires are supposed to go. Like, I already kind of have an idea that they're supposed to go through things. Now, there's the longer wire. That's going to go likely through it's going to go through various different things. Like, he's got, for example, what looks to be batteries, and you get 3 of these. You may not be able to see until I probably point them out to you. There's a hole right in the middle there. See right there. So what you can do is you can take the wire. Now, you can either go with the shorter wire or you can go with the longer wire if you wanted to. You could run the longer wire, say, to the table, even though there doesn't seem to be a place that can connect them. Say, for example, you want to use the shorter wire to connect like the batteries. So if you have the eye for this, you're just basically going to thread the wire through these batteries. And you get 3 of them. You don't have to necessarily use all 3 if you don't want. But I'm going to feed them through. And one little thing, too, is if you find like the edge of the wire start to get burred or like it doesn't look thin, you can always just take yourself a pair of like finger clips, like nail clippers, and just kind of clip the edge of it so you get yourself a clean wire again. I just dropped the other battery. But the batteries basically are going to be fed through the wire like this. Again, they can either go on here or they can be fed through the longer wire. And then you also get as well an electrode, which looks to be, I'm guessing this would be an electrode. With this, actually, there's a little hole for the wire just down below here. So what you can do is feed this through the electrode, and it comes out the other side, if you can feed it through successfully. I just want to show you guys closer here. You can see there's a little canal. So I've already fed it through the one side. I just have to find its way through the other side. And we're just going to feed it through. So then once you get basically all that in place, this can then go on the tabletop. And then you can put your electrode through. Oh, I didn't get the wire all the way through, so I'm just going to pull this back out, feed this through. Now, with this obviously being a wire, it works okay the first couple of times you've done this. Because I bent the wire a few times, just with the way I had this originally configured for the opener of this review, it might be a little harder than to feed the wire through. So let me show you guys what I ended up doing. I took the smaller wire, and again, I fed it through the 3 batteries. I finally got the longer wire all the way through the electrode, so then you can have that just running alongside the table. As I move Frankenstein out of the way there, doesn't, though, seem to be a place that this attaches to the table. I was looking around to the back. The only other idea I had was maybe taking it and running it through the top, where then it would be connecting. You'd have to use your imagination, but it would plug into the back of Frankenstein's head as probably the only other option. Or I guess you suppose also could just attach it to the side. But I like the way that they've set everything up. If anything could be said, if they had made only just a longer table, you could then be able to use some of the other accessories that come included with this as well. Like, for example, he comes with 3 different types of domes. He comes with a slightly shorter, more rounder one. He comes with a longer one that's taller. And it comes with a little tiny baby version of the little canisters as well. And these all store things. Oh, what do they store, you may ask? All of these, by the way, you can take the domes and take them off completely. Frankenstein does have the means to swap things around to him, which is one of the coolest things I like about what 4 Horsemen do, is that they have mix and match things that you can change on their own individual figure releases. Frankenstein has already, right now, a head sculpt with the longer hair, which out of the packaging, just stark. Even if this guy was only just released with this look alone, with the longer tailed jacket and the soft goods pants, I think he would have just been a fine release on his own. But the figure does have, again, options available where you can change around the parts. If you don't necessarily like the longer hair, he does come with 2 variations of a bald head sculpt, as you can see, that has the staples and stitches on the front. He's got more of a sneer face on one side. Looks a little bit actually like the Djinn from Wishmaster. And then he has more of a neutral expression. All of these heads, by the way, attach the exact same way. So he's going to have a ball joint. You basically will plug the head off, detach the head that he has right now, and swap it out with these heads instead. Now, say you don't want to use these heads, but you want to do something with them. I'm not going back to the domes. The dome, you're just going to open this up. You're going to take the head that you want to use, sort of just put it inside there, and then you'll just put the dome over top. So right now, he's already got display options available for all the things that he's not going to end up using with the figure's body. Very, very cool. Now, you can also do that as well with this dome, although with this one, you can see isn't going to quite fit the large-scale size heads. However, though, he does also come with 2 other head variations as well. So he's going to get this head sculpt here. That is one of the scariest, if not the scariest head that comes included with Frankenstein, as it's got the glazed over eyes. Very scary looking. And he's also got himself a skull. Now, you're not going to have as easy of a time still getting this one in place because it's just way too big. However, though, you could take the skull, and the skull will fit in there. It's close quarters, mind you, but the skull will still fit inside the dome. So if you want to have it displayed that way, you can have it displayed that way, but the skull also does fit on the ball joint. It does, honestly. So we're going to go ahead and look at those. And then, of course, the smaller thing, obviously isn't going to accommodate either one of the heads, but what it will accommodate, though, is this little skeletal hand. Look at the size of this. And you're looking at this, and you're probably thinking the same thing I was thinking when I first took this guy out of the packaging. Wait, that's a peg. Will it fit? It will fit. It will fit with his body as well. But let's say for right now, we'll just put it inside the dome. I guess we want to have the fingers facing upward. Just put the bottom on there. So now you can have the skeletal hand displayed that way too. A lot of cool stuff going on with this figure. Other things that he gets himself some shackles. Now he gets a pair of shackles that are smaller, and then he gets a pair of shackles that are obviously larger. If you're looking at the way that Frankenstein's built, you're probably going to see that the smaller shackles work the best for his wrists. The larger shackles then work better for his ankles. Now also, if you're going back and looking at the table, just get him to stand here for a second. The table has these little looplets here. So what you can do is that you can take the shackle, and even though it doesn't essentially attach in place, you could use the chains that are from the shackles and you can feed them through those loops. You do it with the hands. You could do it also with the legs down below here as well. So even though these don't necessarily attach to anything on the actual table, it's really neat the fact that you can put them in there. I know we didn't really spend a whole lot of time looking at the table. There's a little wheel on the side. The wheel doesn't turn. Again, you're really going to have to be very careful when it comes to moving the table. Very, very cool, though. Neat design. I know we've already kind of looked at that. So the other thing that he also comes included with is some swappable hands. Now, one hand looks like it's designated for holding something, although he doesn't really have, other than maybe short of maybe a book, doesn't really have anything else that I can think of they could really hold. Now, these are essentially mirror flips, the ones that he already has on his body. So on his body, he's already got like the monster hand. Got a lot of cool stitches there on there as well. And the other side of his body would have also already had the gripping hands. So if you want to have the exact same gripping hands, you obviously would take off that hand, replace it with this one. Monster hand, yeah, same idea. He also comes with some monster feet. The feet themselves do have pegs on the bottoms of them, even though the figure doesn't come included with the display stand. But, you know, just the attention to detail alone, the fact that they'd even put like little scar wounds there, and that they would only really staple these parts, the sides of his feet, and leave the bottom almost as if like while he's been walking, he's been ripping and removing some of his, stitches or his staples. That's a nice little attention to detail. I think that's really neat. And of course, the skin itself being more of a jaundice just because, well, he's been dead for a while. These can't swap out with the ones that he has. And of course, this whole time doing that, let's kind of move everything out of the way. Also gets himself as well a torso bandage. So the torso bandage can replace what he basically has right now. Or, I haven't done it yet, you might even be able to put the jacket over top of this if you want to have the torso bandage already around his body. This is a softer plastic, by the way. With that right over there. So with all that being said, I know we've covered off really a lot of territory without even really spending a whole lot of time looking at the monster. I know we've already kind of looked a little bit at the longer hair version. I just want to spend some time looking at that one more time. Really nice, some really good coloring here. They've painted the face sculpt so good here. You've got the coloring, the dark areas of the lips, the recessed sections of his eyes, got some nice bruising there as well. You got the staples on the top. It just looks painful to see this guy. Longer hair, so if you don't like the longer hair, of course, you can always swap it out for the heads we've already had a look at. He's also got him some substantial detail going on for his body as well. I love the additional wash of brown that they've added to the side. Of course, you got yourself just a little zipper of stitches there at the front of his body. You can really see like he's a sum of many parts. He also has them on the side of his arm as well, on his hands. There's a lot, like I said, a lot of good stuff going on. Now, he does have soft goods pants. These can be detached. These can take off altogether. And, of course, he's got the very large, clunky-looking Frankenstein-style boots. Also do have peg holes on the bottoms of his feet as well. So if you like this look, you're already set, you're already ready to go. You can be ready to be pursued by the mob of villagers. But if you want to change things out, though, the jackets is one thing that already can be removed. You have to take them off, first of all. You have to kind of remove, well, I'll show you guys in a second. Before doing that, though, I did want to show you guys how good the jacket looks as well. Like the body that's wearing it, you can see it's made of many different fabrics, all sort of sewn together, stitched together. In the way that he's sort of designed, it does remind me of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein the movie, where we had Robert De Niro, of course, playing the role. So what we'll do, why don't we stick with a couple of ideas. We'll pop the head off first, and the head is very easy to remove. A very large ball joint, an equally large socket joint. Let's go back to some of these heads that we were looking at. So, like, if you want to use the neutral expression, which I just happened to drop, let's just grab that and put it back onto the ball joint. And we'll just pop that in place. So it's not that much different from the longer hair version, other than the fact he is just bald. Lots of good paint, though. Lots of good paint on this guy. Now, there's that option. If we want to go back to the dome here, we can just take that off. And, of course, we can now use this head sculpt, which does have the more sneer on his face. And, again, pops that off. Replace it with this one. Some of these ball joints, or some I should say of these heads, worked a little bit better onto the ball joints. Now, again, if you're having any issues, they even say as well, like, heat these up. I haven't actually heated up some of these heads, so that's why I'm having a little more of a harder time getting them on there. But then there's this head sculpt. I'm just running through the gambit here, and we're going to put on... This is the more unsettling of the heads. Popping it onto the ball joint. Oh, there goes his torso. I'm just going to leave the torso off to the side here, because that is actually one thing that's important. Changing out the head, there's that one. I would have said this is probably my favorite of the heads, but it doesn't really look the most like Frankenstein. It's just a really unsettling looking face. And again, if you wanted to, you can also revert back to the idea that by now his skin is completely worn away. And he's got himself the skeletal head instead. I just have to heat this one a little bit more. So one thing also, speaking of heating, I've already taken the liberty of heating up the torso. The lower half of his body does attach, but it attaches by a very large ball joint. I struggled quite a lot to remove this. If you did want to change and add the bandages to the lower half of his abdomen area, recommended by me, highly, heat this up first with a hairdryer. Even if you can't even get in there with hot water, heat it up with a hairdryer. It's going to be the easiest to remove this. And while we're leaving actually his lower half of his body here, let's go ahead and just take his jacket off. So the jacket just slides down either side of his arms. You might even find it's easier just to take the hands off as well. Just pop those off. Take that off. And then just bring his arms back just enough that we can actually take the jacket off completely. And just put it off to the side. I know we're kind of just stripping down the body here. Again, one of the things I really like about what we're getting here from the Four Horsemen is that there's so much things that you can change these characters. So again, like this is just a stock body. We haven't really done much in the way of hands. By the way, though, I did want to show you guys where is the skeletal hand. We kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. You can take the skeletal hand, and because it's using the exact same size peg, it may look a little out of place. It may look a little strange, but you can actually use the skeletal hand. So what we got everything going on here. The lower half of his body does have the soft goods fabric, obviously for his pants. There's a little tear there in the knee. It also has a real string there for his belt. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the boots here. Now I had a struggle with this specific boot. I'm going to just wiggle this off. Just pop it off the ball joint here. There we go. Put it off to the side. We'll do the exact same on this side too. Just wiggle this back and forth. Now, whereas that boot actually popped off from the peg, this one popped off a lot easier. I just had to basically put the peg back into the boot. And we'll just remove those. We'll go ahead as well. We're going to remove this piece too. And seeing as now we have a lower half of his body without the top of his body, we're going to slide everything off of him. And this is so much easier, obviously, to do when you have two halves of Frankenstein separate from one another. So now you're going to basically have the lower half of his body, and we're going to have the top half. To keep this guy looking somewhat decent, let's go ahead and take this, the wrappings. And the wrappings, when you're looking at this, you're going to want to have this so that the front bandages draping forward like this. And then we're going to go ahead and attach this back to his body. Now, once you've heated this the first time, you shouldn't have any issues after that keeping everything together. There we go. I may have actually, in between takes, when I was kind of just like playing around, I may not have snapped it completely in place. And that was one of the reasons why the lower half of his body came off. So that's basically what it's going to look like. And then we're going to go ahead and take the hands, Plug those back in. And where's the other hand? Grab the other one. Plug that also in place. Now, because he doesn't have pants, it makes no sense at all to go back to the Frankenstein boots. So what we're going to go instead with is his feet. The feet are using larger pegs, so they're a lot easier to peg in place. And we'll just wiggle that in until finally it attaches itself. And we'll do the exact same on this side as well. I will say, admittingly, while I'm showing you guys how to do this in the review, I think my look when it comes to displaying Frankenstein on the shelf may not necessarily be this one. When I look at this one, I kind of think it looks a little more like a mummy. I do like the idea. Obviously, you can see a lot more of the work that they did behind the scenes to make this guy a reality. But I feel like just like looking at him the way that he is now, obviously, it's going to look a little out of place until we finally attach onto a head. I myself would probably prefer to display this guy with the jacket, with the longer hair, exactly the same way that he looked at the beginning and the way he looks in the packaging. Well, that's Frankenstein once you strip everything down, and then, of course, you add the bandages, give him the bald head. Now, again, you don't have to. If you want to go with the longer hair, you can obviously go that route as well. But it's a really interesting design. Even if this is a little jarring for what you would normally expect, picture in your mind of what Frankenstein would look like, it's got a lot of good stuff going for him. Now, with that as well, the figure does have some decent levels of posability. Running through first with his head, the head's on a ball joint. It's going to rotate all the way around. It's also going to look down and up. There is a hinge right here, so that's going to give you a little bit of extra freedom, providing, of course, you got the head all the way on there. Arms rotate all the way around. You can also bring as well the arms out. Now, there is no swivel here for the bicep, but what there is instead is there's a swivel for the forearm. There's also a hinge there as well, just a single hinge, and hands rotate all the way around with a hinge back and forth. The upper torso. Now, so this whole section is one sculpt. They didn't break this up at all. Initially, I was kind of thinking, it would have been nice if the top half was separate from the rest of his abdomen, but I know realizing this, I mean, obviously it would have broken up the sculpt, and it looks so much cleaner and complete had they kept all one piece together. So it's only going to have a ball joint down below, and I think, honestly, that's the only thing it really does need. The legs do split out. Now, they're a little bit more now limited, just because, again, you've got the bandages wrapped around his lower half of his body. The figure does have a swivel at the top of the thigh. He has a single hinge in the knee that also allows the lower leg to rotate. And he's got some decent levels of posability in his ankles, not only back and forth this way, but an ankle rocker as well. So if you wanted to, again, like if you want to get this guy onto the tabletop, just kind of move everything out of the way here. We can move the straps out of the way. And maybe the only other thing I would have said is I wish that the bottom of the table may have had like a little lip or something just to catch his feet. But again, like once you get this guy strapped down, which again is just going to attach those pegs on either side. We'll do the exact same on the lower leg. The strap on the bottom is really the thing that's going to keep everything together on him. It's going to prevent him from obviously escaping, which probably would be the best thing. And then you got Frankenstein on the lab table, looking really cool. Yeah, it's a good release from the folks over at Four Horsemen. They did a lot of good stuff going on here. I'm almost even tempted. I'd like to get a second one of these. On paper, though, I mean, like the fact that he does have as many things as you can change out to him. I mean, we looked at all the things that he has, like 4 or 5 different alternate head sculpts, several different series of hands that you can change out as well. You can also opt as well if you want to maybe go back and put the jacket on there too. For me, I would rather just have the figure displayed, I think, with the jacket, with the pants as well, and then with the Frankenstein boots, just for the way that he looks on the front of the packaging. I think that's my ideal look for Frankie, because I think I really like the interpretation that they went with when it came to his design. This sort of does strip him down a little bit more bare bones, so to speak. But one thing at least, though, by stripping down as much as I did on the character, you really get a chance to see how much work they put into this character. Not only the way they sculpted him, but as well the fact that the figure does have as many posability parts as he does have. The only thing about him, though, is, as you saw in this review, there was a fair bit of things that does require a little bit of force to remove, like taking off his feet, for example, changing out the heads. Again, very much I would stress this. If you are looking to pick up this figure for yourself, consider the idea first that if you are removing things on the figure's body, you got to heat them first with a hairdryer. Not as much for the hands. Now, I've seen some people actually like suggest heating the hands. I find like the hands didn't have any issues at all actually removing the hands and changing those out. But the head and especially the torso. The torso was probably the hardest thing I had to do. I first just tried to do it with my hands just manually, and then I just realized, I don't want to jeopardize potentially breaking the peg on this. So I decided instead to stop what I was doing, grab myself a hairdryer and soften that up first. And sure enough, just a few passes really was all it took before I was able to finally remove it. Again, when I was removing it and popping it back in place, I probably wanted to make sure that I didn't attach it so securely that I wouldn't be able to do it in this review. Probably one of the reasons why his torso fell off while I was doing it. But yeah, I'm really happy with how this one turned out. They have done some Figura Obscura figures in the past. There were ones I missed my chance on getting. I'd love to get my hands on the Krampus. Of course, the Headless Horseman is top on my list right now. I think they've done a fantastic job here on Frankie. The fact that this figure is going for $70 over on their site for as many things as he actually has it at his disposal, it's just an insane price. The fact that they're asking $70 only for him, considering the fact that he does have all the things that he has, like the fact that also really like with these heads, normally with most figure companies, when you have yourself extra body parts like this, so funny that we're talking about for Frankenstein. You have extra parts like this, you tend to always want to go back to putting them back in a bag or putting them back in the packaging. The thing that's neat, though, about Frankenstein is that they also included all the little domes and stuff like that, too. So, really, whatever heads you don't end up really using, you can also display along with Frankenstein as well. And I think that's a really neat touch. Now, old Frankie here is a man that's known for having many parts, and what a better example being the first one of looking at a figure Obscura from the folks over at Four Horsemen, a company that's been known for producing figures where you can change around the parts to them. Now, we did start the beginning of this review, obviously, with Frankie leaving the lab being pursued by villagers with torches and pitchforks. Having chosen to have him with a jacket, obviously the soft, good pants and longer hair, you can then strip everything down if you want to have him strapped to the lab table. The jacket doesn't work as well if you want to have him on the lab table just because the jacket's a little bulkier. Now, I would say, though, if you are looking to change the parts around, as mentioned in this review, it's best advised to heat everything that you want to move around with a hairdryer first. I did maybe make mention of water. Water is probably the last thing. Obviously, this guy's being surged with electricity. That's already a no-no. But getting this guy wet is probably not a good idea either. Just a hairdryer is a simple fix. That's all I really need to do. The things that he really needed to heat with a hairdryer was the ankles for his boots. More specifically, though, his abdomen area. If you are looking to change the parts, first of all, to take off his pants or even to add the bandages, recommended highly use the hairdryer trick first. It's going to be enough just to soften up the socket for that ball joint, and it's going to make detaching the top half from his bottom half of his body so much easier. I think when it's all said and done and when this review is finally wrapped up, I'm going to probably just go back to displaying Frankenstein with the jacket and the long hair. That's the look that I like, but I like that the options were available. Now, this guy is available right now, speaking of which, though, on their site for $70. I can't believe that for how much we get in this figure, that he's only going for $70. He is available as of right now, so again, if you guys are interested, I can provide the link down below in the video description. He's got a lot of good stuff going for him. Truth be told, he actually has more things than he actually has a tabletop to house them. I mean, like the domes, for example, down below that hold and house the extra heads. All his extra books, for example. There's only so much tabletop you have to work with. If anything, this guy needed another one of them. But a big thank you once again to the folks over at Four Horsemen that did provide the sample of the Figura Obscura Frankenstein's creature that we had the chance to have a look at this review. Have you guys already been lucky enough to order this guy for yourself? Or if not, is this one that you could definitely see yourselves adding to your collection? If you guys also did enjoy this video, do it a solid. Throw it a like. You guys want to stick around for more so? Woo! I hope so. Obviously, we're not done yet with the rest of Spottober. There's going to be a whole lot more spooky spots coming your way. So making sure, you're hitting the subscribe. Making sure, of course, you're turning on the bell. But the most important thing is that you're coming back. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.